What if the one night you swore would stay a secret was the very night your entire life began to unravel? Why did the hotel's housekeeper seem to know my name before I even gave it? And how did my husband get hold of every receipt, every keycard log, every photo? I thought I could control the story, until the envelope arrived with my name and legal notice, stamped in angry red across the front. The smell of expensive champagne still clung to my hair as I slipped through the front door at 6:47 a.m., my heels dangling from my fingers. The townhouse was silent, except for the grandfather clock's rhythmic ticking in the foyer. Callum's coffee mug sat in the kitchen sink, still warm. He'd already left for work. Perfect. I had time to shower, change, and craft my story. Just a crazy night with the girls, I whispered to my reflection in the hallway mirror, practicing the lie. My lipstick was gone, my dress wrinkled, but my wedding ring caught the morning light like nothing had changed. Sarah got us into this exclusive hotel party. You know how she is with her connections. The shower water ran hot against my skin as I scrubbed away the evidence. Mason's cologne, the taste of Dom Perignon. The feeling of his hands on my waist as we danced in that penthouse suite at the Meridian Grand. It was supposed to be harmless, just flirting with a charming stranger who'd bought our table drinks at the hotel bar. Just dancing. Just talking about how my husband never took me anywhere exciting anymore. Just 3 nights of the most thrilling sex I'd had in years. I wrapped myself in a towel and opened my jewelry box to put away the earrings Mason had bought me at the hotel boutique. That's when I saw it, a manila folder tucked beneath Callum's side of the bed, partially hidden under his pillow. My hands shook as I lifted the corner. Hotel letterhead, Meridian Grand. My name typed in bold letters across the top of what looked like a guest folio. Shit, I breathed, dropping the folder like it was on fire. My phone buzzed. A text from Mason. Had an amazing time. When can I see you again? My restaurant opens next month. You'd love the private dining room. I deleted the message immediately, then cleared my deleted folder. Then I realized I should check if Callum had seen my phone. No, I always kept it locked. He didn't know the passcode. Did he? The front door opened downstairs. Callum's voice carried up. Ysolde, you home? Just getting dressed, I called back, shoving the folder back where I'd found it. How was your morning? Productive. His tone was flat, professional. The same voice he used with difficult hotel vendors. We need to talk when you have a minute. My stomach dropped. About what? Your girls' night. Marion called looking for you around midnight. Said she tried your cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Fuck, I'd forgotten about dinner with his mother. My phone died at the club. You know how loud those places are. I probably wouldn't have heard it anyway. Silence from downstairs. Then, which club? I threw on jeans and a sweater, buying time. That new place downtown. Pulse, I think. Sarah picked it. The lie rolled off my tongue easily. Too easily. When I came downstairs, Callum was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open and a stack of papers beside him. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his tie knotted with mathematical precision. Everything about my husband was controlled, measured, predictable. When had that stopped being comforting and started feeling like a prison? Coffee? I asked, moving toward the machine. Already had some. He didn't look up from his screen. How's Sarah doing? Haven't seen her in a while. Another test. Sarah was in Portland for her sister's wedding. Had been for 2 weeks. Callum knew that. She's good. Busy with work stuff. His fingers tapped against the table. Must have been quite a night. You forgot to take off your hotel room bracelet. I looked down at my wrist. A thin paper band with Meridian Grand, Penthouse Access, printed in gold letters. My blood turned to ice. Oh, that. I laughed, tearing it off. Sarah knows someone who works there. Got us VIP treatment at their bar. The Meridian Grand. Callum finally looked at me, his grey eyes unreadable. Interesting choice. Why? No reason. Just interesting that you'd end up there, considering. Considering what? He closed his laptop with a soft click. Considering I manage their sister property downtown. Considering their night manager, David Chen, is a good friend of mine. Considering he mentioned seeing someone who looked exactly like my wife in their penthouse elevator around 11 p.m. with a man who wasn't me. The kitchen seemed to tilt. That's ridiculous. It was dark. He was certain enough to pull the security footage. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. I gripped the counter, trying to look confused instead of terrified. Security footage of what? Me having drinks with friends? That's what we're going to find out. Callum stood, straightening his tie. David's emailing me the lobby cameras this morning. Should clear everything up. He kissed my forehead, a cold, perfunctory gesture, and headed for the door. Oh, and Ysolde, next time you want to use the Meridian Grand for entertainment, maybe don't use the credit card that sends me spending alerts. $600 in cash advances the night before a girls' night seems excessive, don't you think? The door closed behind him with a gentle click that sounded like a gunshot. I stood frozen in the kitchen, my mind racing. How much did he know? How much could he prove? The security cameras would show me entering with Mason, but they wouldn't show what happened in the room. The credit card showed cash withdrawals, but not what I spent it on. I could still control this narrative. I could still make this go away. My phone rang. Callum's mother. Marion, hi. Don't you hi me, young lady. Where were you last night? I made dinner for 6 people and you never showed up. Never called. Callum was worried sick. I'm so sorry. My phone died and I forgot. You forgot about family dinner? The one we've had every second Tuesday for 3 years? I closed my eyes. It was a last-minute thing with Sarah. You know how she gets when she's stressed. Sarah's in Portland. The lie crumbled in my mouth. I meant Sarah's friend, also named Sarah. Sarah Johnson. Uh-huh. Marion's voice could have frozen water. And this Sarah Johnson took you to the Meridian Grand? How did she know about the hotel? Had Callum already called her? It wasn't planned, I said weakly. We just ended up there for drinks. Expensive drinks. Callum showed me the credit card alert. $600 in cash, Ysolde? What kind of drinks cost $600? We went shopping first. You know how downtown is. What did you buy? Excuse me? What did you buy with $600 in cash that you couldn't put on the card? Show me the receipts. I had no receipts. The cash had gone to Mason, for the hotel suite, for champagne, for the earrings I'd hidden in my jewelry box, for making me feel alive again after years of Tuesday night dinners and predictable conversations about hotel occupancy rates. I don't have to justify my spending to you, Marion. No, but you'll have to justify it to my son. And from the sound of his voice this morning, you'd better come up with something better than Sarah Johnson and expensive drinks. She hung up. I sank into Callum's chair, staring at the stack of papers he'd left behind. Hotel industry newsletters, vendor contracts, and underneath, barely visible, the corner of what looked like a photograph. I lifted the contracts with trembling fingers. It was a security camera still, black and white, time-stamped 11:23 p.m. 3 nights ago. A woman in a black dress, my black dress, stepping into an elevator with a tall man in a suit. The woman was laughing, her hand on the man's chest. The man's hand was on her lower back, possessive and intimate. The woman was unmistakably me. A post-it note was attached to the photo in Callum's precise handwriting. Penthouse level. Guest registry shows Mason Clark, room 2847. Checkout, 6:15 a.m. My phone buzzed with another text from Mason. Can't stop thinking about you. When can we do this again? This time, I didn't delete it fast enough, because as I stared at the message, I realized something that made my blood run cold. The timestamp on Mason's text was 9:47 a.m. The timestamp on the security photo was 11:23 p.m. But I'd told Callum I was at a club until 2 a.m., and I'd told Marion my phone was dead. The lies were already falling apart, and it wasn't even noon. The event planning office felt suffocating as I tried to focus on seating charts for the Henderson wedding. Every phone ring made me jump. Every footstep in the hallway sounded like Callum coming to confront me with more evidence. "You look like hell," said Jennifer, my business partner, dropping a stack of vendor contracts on my desk. "Late night?" "Something like that." I forced a smile. "You know how Sarah gets when she wants to party." Jennifer frowned. "Isn't Sarah in Portland?" Why did everyone know Sarah's schedule better than I did? Different Sarah, college friend. Ah. Jennifer didn't look convinced. "Well, whoever she is, she's got expensive taste. I saw your Instagram story, the Meridian Grand. Their penthouse bar is like $300 a bottle." My blood froze. "What Instagram story?" "The one you posted around midnight. You and that gorgeous guy by the champagne fountain. Lucky girl, he looked loaded." I grabbed my phone with shaking hands, opening Instagram. There it was, a story I didn't remember posting, probably uploaded when I was drunk on Mason's champagne and attention. The photo showed Mason's hand around my waist, both of us laughing in what was clearly the penthouse suite. The location tag read, "Meridian Grand, penthouse level." Shit. I deleted it immediately, but Jennifer was already giving me a knowing look. "Trouble in paradise with Callum?" "No, it's not. It was just a fun night out. Girls celebrating." "With a guy who definitely wasn't celebrating like a girlfriend." Jennifer's voice carried a warning. "Be careful, Ysolde. This business runs on reputation. Clients book us because they trust us to be discreet, professional. If word gets out that you're—" "I'm not doing anything wrong." The words came out sharper than I intended. "It was one night of harmless fun." Jennifer held up her hands. "Your business, just saying, small town, big mouths, especially in the hospitality industry. Everyone knows everyone." She was right. The wedding and event planning world in our city was tiny. Half our clients were connected to the hotel industry, and Callum's reputation opened doors I couldn't access on my own. If people started talking... My phone rang. Unknown number. Ysolde Fenwick Events. "Mrs. Fenwick, this is David Chen from the Meridian Grand. I believe you know my colleague, your husband Callum." My mouth went dry. "Oh, hi David, what can I do for you?" "I'm calling about your recent stay with us. There seems to be some confusion about the billing. The gentleman you were with, Mr. Clark, indicated that you would be handling the incidental charges for the penthouse suite." "Incidental charges?" "Room service, champagne, spa services, boutique purchases. The total comes to $1,800. Mr. Clark's card was declined, and since you're listed as a preferred guest through your husband's professional account..." $1,800. Mason had stuck me with an $1,800 bill and disappeared. "There must be some mistake," I said, aware that Jennifer was listening to every word. "I wasn't a guest at your hotel. I was just there for drinks." "Ma'am, I have the keycard log showing your entry to room 2847 at 11:23 p.m. and exit at 6:15 a.m. 3 separate occasions over the past month. Your signature is on the room service receipts." 3 occasions. He had records of all 3 nights with Mason. Can I call you back?" "Of course, but Mrs. Fenwick, your husband specifically requested copies of all documentation related to your stays, for his records." The line went dead. Jennifer was staring at me with a mixture of concern and disgust. "Ysolde, what the hell is going on?" "Nothing. It's a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding about $1,800 in hotel charges with some guy named Clark, while your husband gets copies of the documentation." I grabbed my purse. "I need to go handle this." "You need to handle your marriage first, and your priorities." Jennifer's voice followed me to the door. "The Morrison account called this morning. They're reconsidering using us for their anniversary party. Apparently, someone sent them screenshots of your Instagram story with questions about our professionalism. The Morrison account was worth $30,000. I stopped in the doorway. Who sent them screenshots? Does it matter? The damage is done. Fix this, Ysolde, before it destroys everything we've built. I drove to the Meridian Grand in a panic, rehearsing explanations that sounded increasingly desperate. The valet recognized me immediately, another bad sign. Good afternoon, Mrs. Fenwick. Will you be staying with us again today? No, I just need to speak with David Chen. The lobby felt different in daylight, less glamorous, more exposed. The champagne fountain where Mason had first bought me drinks looked garish under the afternoon sun, streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. David Chen was a small, precise man with kind eyes that turned cold when he saw me. Mrs. Fenwick, thank you for coming in. About those charges, let's discuss this privately. He led me to a small office behind the concierge desk. The walls were covered with security monitors showing every angle of the hotel, including the penthouse elevator. I've known your husband for 5 years, David said, settling behind his desk. He's helped us resolve countless issues with vendor contracts, staff scheduling, crisis management. He's a good man. Yes, he is. Which is why the situation is particularly uncomfortable for me. David opened a manila folder, identical to the one I'd seen under Callum's pillow. Mr. Clark is a frequent guest. He books our penthouse suite monthly for what he calls business entertainment, usually with different women. The words hit me like a physical blow. Different women. I wasn't special. I was just another conquest. The first time you accompanied him, I assumed you were separated from Callum. These things happen, but when you returned a second time, then a third. David shook his head. I called your husband this morning. Professional courtesy. You called Callum? I had to. Mr. Clark's business is under investigation by the City Licensing Board. Something about bribing officials for restaurant permits. Having a hotel operations manager's wife involved in his activities puts us in a very difficult position. The room seemed to spin. Investigation. FBI Financial Crimes Unit. They've been tracking his spending patterns, his associates, his meeting locations. This hotel is now part of their inquiry. David slid a photograph across the desk. It showed Mason and me in the hotel restaurant, but we weren't alone. 3 men in suits sat at our table, men I recognized from Callum's work functions, city planning officials, zoning board members. You introduced Mr. Clark to these gentlemen at our restaurant last week. They discussed his new establishment, the permits he needed, the expedited approvals that would help him open on schedule. I remembered that night. Mason had been charming, professional, asking intelligent questions about zoning requirements and liquor licensing. I'd been proud to introduce him to Callum's contacts, eager to show off my own connections in the city's business community. I'd been used. Completely, thoroughly used. The FBI wants to interview everyone who facilitated meetings between Mr. Clark and city officials. That includes you. I didn't facilitate anything. I just made introductions. Using your husband's professional relationships, at a hotel where your husband has vendor privileges, with your signature on the room service receipts, and your keycard accessing the suite where these meetings were arranged. David leaned forward, his expression almost sympathetic. Mrs. Fenwick, I don't know what Mr. Clark promised you, but you're in serious legal trouble, and you've dragged your husband into it. My phone buzzed. A text from Mason. Need to see you tonight. Something's come up with the restaurant. Can you meet me at the usual place? David saw me reading the message. I wouldn't recommend that. Mr. Clark's assets were frozen this morning. His restaurant project is dead, and anyone associated with his business activities is now under federal scrutiny. I stared at the phone, remembering Mason's hands on my skin, his whispered promises about private dinners in his restaurant, his casual questions about Callum's work contacts. Every intimate moment had been calculated, orchestrated, designed to extract information and access. What happens now? Now you go home and tell your husband the truth, all of it, because the FBI will be calling him tomorrow, and they already know more than you think. David stood, indicating the meeting was over. Mrs. Fenwick, your preferred guest status has been revoked. You're no longer welcome at any property in our hotel group. I walked through the lobby on unsteady legs, past the champagne fountain where this nightmare had started, past the elevator that had carried me to 3 nights of passion that were about to destroy my life. The valet brought my car around with professional courtesy that felt like mockery. As I drove away from the Meridian Grand, I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror. I looked exactly like what I was, a middle-aged woman who'd thrown away everything that mattered for a few hours, with a criminal who'd never cared about her at all. My phone rang. Callum. Where are you? Driving home from the office. Good. We need to talk. The FBI called. The line went dead, and I knew my time for controlling the narrative had just run out. Callum was waiting in the kitchen when I got home, laptop open, papers spread across the table like evidence at a crime scene. Our 7-year-old daughter Lila sat at the counter doing homework, her dark hair falling across her face as she worked on math problems. Hey baby, I said, kissing the top of her head. How was school? Fine. Daddy's been on the phone a lot. He sounds mad. I glanced at Callum, who was studying his computer screen with the focused intensity he usually reserved for hotel crisis management. Maybe you should finish your homework upstairs, sweetie. But I always do homework in the kitchen. Not today. Callum's voice was quiet but firm. Take your books to your room. We'll call you for dinner. Lila gathered her things with the careful movements of a child who sensed adult tension without understanding it. After her footsteps faded up the stairs, Callum turned his laptop toward me. Sit down. The screen showed our joint credit card account, filtered to show only cash advances over the past 4 months. 6 transactions, each for exactly $600, each occurring the day before what I'd told him were girls' nights out. $3,600, he said calmly. In cash, always withdrawn from the ATM at 5th Street and Main, 2 blocks from the Meridian Grand. Always between 4 and 6 p.m. Always the day before you claimed to be out with Sarah. I sank into the chair across from him, my mind scrambling for explanations. I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're very creative with explanations. He clicked to another screen. But let me show you something else first. Bank records, hotel folios, credit card statements. He'd assembled a timeline that was horrifyingly thorough. March 15th, $600 cash advance at 4:23 p.m. Hotel folio shows Mason Clark checking into Penthouse Suite 2847 at 5:15 p.m. Room service charges for champagne, strawberries, and 2 dinners. Keycard logs show a second guest entering at 11:20 p.m., exiting at 6:15 a.m. He clicked to the next entry. April 22nd, $600 cash, advance at 5:45 p.m. Same suite, same pattern. This time, the room service includes spa treatments for 2 and boutique purchases totaling $400. Another click. May 18th, $600 cash advance at 4:15 p.m. Same suite, same timeline. Additional charges for flowers, wine, and what appears to be jewelry from the hotel boutique. I stared at the screen, watching my marriage dissolve in spreadsheet format. Callum, I'm not finished. His voice remained steady, professional. Each of these dates corresponds to what you told me were spontaneous girls' nights. Each time you claimed your phone died. Each time you came home with a story about Sarah's wild ideas, or Jennifer's birthday, or some college friend visiting from out of town. He opened another window. But here's what's interesting. I called Sarah. She's been in Portland for 2 weeks, but she was also in Seattle in March and Denver in April. Jennifer's birthday is in October, and according to your college roommate Lisa, whom I also called, None of your college friends live within 500 miles of here. The methodical destruction of my lies was almost admirable in its thoroughness. This was Callum at his professional best, the same skills that made him excellent at managing hotel operations, now applied to managing the collapse of our marriage. You called my college friends. I called everyone you claimed to be with, because I'm about to be interviewed by the FBI about my wife's relationship with a federal suspect, and I needed to know exactly how deep this goes. FBI. The word hit me like a physical blow. What did they say? They said Mason Clark has been under investigation for 6 months. Bribery, money laundering, tax evasion. They said he uses attractive women to gain access to city officials and business contacts. They said you're not the first wife he's seduced for professional connections. Not the first wife. The humiliation was complete. They also said you introduced him to 3 zoning board members, 2 city planning officials, and a liquor licensing inspector. All at functions where you used my professional credentials to gain access. I didn't know. You didn't know he was a criminal. But you knew you were cheating on your husband with money from our joint account. You knew you were lying to our daughter about where you spent your nights. You knew you were using my professional relationships to help your lover's business interests. Callum closed the laptop with a soft click. The question is, what else don't I know? I looked around our kitchen, the granite countertops we'd chosen together, the family photos on the refrigerator, Lila's artwork taped to the cabinet doors. Everything that mattered was in this room, and I'd risked it all for a man who'd seen me as nothing more than a useful connection. It wasn't supposed to happen, I said quietly. I met him at the hotel bar when Jennifer and I were having drinks after the Morrison consultation. He was charming, funny, interested in my work. When was the last time you asked about my work, Callum? So this is my fault? No, but we've been married 9 years. When did we stop talking? When did we become roommates instead of lovers? Callum studied me with the same analytical expression he used for budget reports. We stopped talking when you decided our life wasn't exciting enough. We became roommates when you started spending your nights with someone else. It was just 3 times. 3 times that I can prove. How many times did you meet him outside the hotel? How many lunches, coffee dates, afternoon meetings to discuss his restaurant plans? Too many to count. Mason had been intoxicating in a way I'd forgotten was possible. Spontaneous dinners at expensive restaurants, surprise gifts, passionate conversations about art and travel, and all the things Callum never seemed interested in discussing. I don't know, maybe a dozen times. Using what money? My own money, from my business account. Callum pulled out another folder. Your business account that's been overdrawn 3 times in the past 2 months. The account that required transfers from our savings to cover your expenses. He was right. The lunches, the gifts, the new clothes I'd bought to impress Mason, it had all added up faster than I'd realized. So you've been spending our savings to subsidize your affair while lying to me about girls' nights that never happened. Callum's voice remained calm, but I could see the anger building behind his eyes. And in the process, you've made me an unwitting accomplice to federal crimes. You're not an accomplice. I'm married to a woman who used my professional relationships to facilitate meetings between a criminal and city officials. My name is on the hotel vendor accounts that gave you access to those officials. My reputation vouched for your credibility when you made those introductions. The full scope of what I'd done was finally becoming clear. I hadn't just cheated on my husband, I'd potentially destroyed his career. What did the FBI say about you? They said I'm a person of interest. They want to interview me tomorrow about what I knew and when I knew it. They want to review my financial records, my communications, my work files. Callum stood up, gathering his papers with mechanical precision. They also said that if I cooperate fully and provide evidence of your activities, I might avoid criminal charges. Evidence? Bank records, hotel receipts, communication logs, security footage, Everything I've been collecting since David Chen called me this morning. I stared at him. You've been collecting evidence against me. I've been protecting myself and our daughter from the consequences of your choices. He tucked the folders under his arm. The FBI will be here tomorrow at 2 p.m. to interview both of us. I suggest you spend tonight deciding whether you want to tell them the truth or let them discover it on their own. He headed toward the stairs, then turned back. Oh, and Ysolde, I've moved our savings into an account with only my name on it. The credit cards have been cancelled. If you want to keep seeing Mason Clark, you'll have to find another way to pay for it. Callum, wait. I'm going to put Lila to bed and then call my lawyer. I suggest you do the same. He disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the wreckage of my marriage spread across the table in neat, organized piles. Through the window, I could see our neighbors' houses glowing with warm light, normal families having normal dinners, their lives untouched by federal investigations and adultery scandals. My phone buzzed. Another text from Mason. Where are you? We need to talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow. When the FBI would interview me about my relationship with a man who'd used me for access and stuck me with $1,800 in hotel bills. I deleted the message and turned off my phone. For the first time in months, I had no idea what tomorrow would bring. The FBI agents arrived at exactly 2 p.m. in a black sedan that screamed federal investigation to anyone watching. Agent Sarah Martinez was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who spoke with the precision of someone accustomed to courtroom testimony. Agent Tom Bradley was younger, quieter, taking notes while Martinez asked questions that felt like surgical instruments. They sat in our living room, the same room where Lila had taken her first steps, where we'd opened Christmas presents, where Callum and I had planned our future together. Now it felt like an interrogation chamber. Mrs. Fenwick, how did you first meet Mason Clark? I'd rehearsed this answer all night. At the Meridian Grand Hotel bar, I was there with my business partner for drinks after a client consultation. When was this? March 10th, I think, around 8 p.m. Martinez consulted her notes. Hotel records show Mr. Clark checking into the penthouse suite at 5:15 p.m. that day. He specifically requested information about hotel guests who might be well connected in the local business community. Did he approach you or did you approach him? The question revealed how much they already knew. He approached me, bought our table a bottle of champagne. And you found him attractive? Heat flooded my face. I suppose. Attractive enough to meet him again. We had dinner a few times. He was interested in opening a restaurant. I thought I might be able to help with the event planning for his grand opening. Agent Bradley looked up from his notes. Did Mr. Clark ever ask about your husband's work? Casually, the way people do when they're getting to know someone. What specifically did he ask? I tried to remember the early conversations, before the lies in hotel rooms and cash advances. He asked what Callum did, which hotels he worked with, whether he knew people in city government. And you told him? I mentioned that Callum knew people in the hospitality industry. That's not a secret. Martinez leaned forward. Mrs. Fenwick, we have surveillance footage of you introducing Mr. Clark to city planning official Robert Hayes at the Meridian Grand Restaurant on April 25th. You specifically mentioned that Mr. Hayes had expedited permits for other hotel projects your husband had worked on. Do you remember that conversation? I remembered. Mason had been charming, asking thoughtful questions about the permitting process, while his hand rested on my knee under the table. I'd been proud to show off my connections, to prove I wasn't just a suburban housewife, but someone with real influence in the city's business community. I may have made some introductions. That's what people do at business dinners. Business dinners? Agent Bradley's eyebrows rose. Mrs. Fenwick, hotel records show you were registered as Mr. Clark's guest in Penthouse Suite 2847. You signed for room service charges totaling over $300. The dinner was charged to the room. Callum sat beside me on the couch, his face expressionless. We'd barely spoken since yesterday's confrontation, but he'd made it clear that his cooperation with the FBI was complete and unconditional. I didn't know the dinner was charged to his room. But you knew you were having an extramarital affair with a man who was using you to gain access to city officials. The words hung in the air like an indictment. I didn't know he was using me. When did you realize Mr. Clark's interest in you was connected to your husband's professional relationships? Never. Even now, even after David Chen's revelation about Mason's pattern of seducing connected women, part of me wanted to believe there had been something real between us. I'm not sure I ever realized it. Martinez exchanged a look with her partner. Mrs. Fenwick, we have recorded conversations between Mr. Clark and his business partner discussing your usefulness in gaining access to city officials. In one conversation, dated May 20th, Mr. Clark specifically mentions that sleeping with you was worth the investment because of the connections you provided. The room seemed to tilt. Recorded conversations. Mason discussing our intimate moments as a business investment. I'd like to hear those recordings. I'm sure you would, but right now, we need to understand the scope of your involvement in Mr. Clark's activities. Agent Bradley consulted his tablet. You introduced Mr. Clark to Robert Hayes from City Planning, Jennifer Walsh from the Zoning Board, Michael Torres from the Liquor Licensing Division, and David Kim from the Building Inspector's Office. All of these introductions occurred at functions where you used your husband's professional credentials to gain access. I didn't use Callum's credentials. I was invited to those events as his wife. And you brought an uninvited guest to discuss business that directly benefited his criminal enterprise. Martinez's tone sharpened. Mrs. Fenwick, Mr. Clark paid bribes totaling $47,000 to expedite permits for his restaurant. The meetings you facilitated were where those bribes were negotiated. Your introductions gave him credibility with officials who trusted your husband's reputation. $47,000 in bribes. I'd been the key that unlocked access to a criminal conspiracy, and I'd done it for free while paying for the privilege with cash advances from my joint account. I didn't know about any bribes. But you knew you were having an affair. You knew you were lying to your husband about where you spent your nights. You knew you were using family money to subsidize hotel rooms where you met with a man who was pumping you for information about city officials. The clinical description of my betrayal was devastating in its accuracy. I looked at Callum, hoping for some sign of support or understanding, but his expression remained neutral, professional. Mr. Fenwick, Martinez turned to my husband, when did you first become suspicious of your wife's activities? When David Chen called me about the hotel charges, I'd noticed the cash advances and the late nights, but I trusted my wife's explanations until I saw the security footage. What did you do when you saw the footage? I started documenting everything: bank records, hotel receipts, communication logs. I wanted to understand the full scope of the situation before taking action. And what action did you take? Callum's voice remained steady. I contacted my attorney and began cooperating with your investigation. Martinez nodded approvingly. Mr. Fenwick, your cooperation has been invaluable. The evidence you've provided will be crucial in prosecuting Mr. Clark and his associates. Evidence he'd provided. My husband had been building a case against me while I was still meeting Mason for afternoon coffee and planning our next hotel rendezvous. Mrs. Fenwick, Martinez's attention returned to me. We're prepared to offer you immunity from prosecution in exchange for your full cooperation. That means testifying against Mr. Clark, providing details about every meeting you facilitated, and submitting to regular polygraph examinations to verify your testimony. And if I don't cooperate, then you'll be charged as a co-conspirator in a federal bribery scheme. The penalties include up to 10 years in prison and forfeiture of any assets connected to the criminal enterprise. 10 years in prison. I thought of Lila upstairs in her room. probably listening to every word through the heating vents. I thought of our townhouse, our savings account, the life Callum and I had built together. I'll cooperate. Good. We'll need you to wear a wire for your next meeting with Mr. Clark. He's been texting me, but I haven't responded. Agent Bradley pulled out his phone. Text him back. Tell him you need to see him tonight. Tell him you're worried about the FBI investigation and need to know what to say. You want me to trick him? We want you to help us gather evidence of his criminal activities, evidence that might reduce your own culpability in this matter. I took the phone with shaking hands and typed, "Can we meet tonight? I'm scared about the FBI. What should I tell them?" The response came immediately. Meridian Grand Bar, 8 p.m. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. Even now, even after everything I'd learned, Mason's confidence was reassuring. Part of me still wanted to believe he cared about me, that I'd meant more to him than just access to city officials. Martinez stood up. "Mrs. Fenwick, you'll meet with our technical team at 6 p.m. to be fitted with recording equipment. Remember, your immunity depends on full cooperation. Any attempt to warn Mr. Clark about this operation will result in immediate prosecution." After the agents left, Callum and I sat in silence in our living room. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, highlighting dust motes floating in the air like tiny accusations. "How long have you been working with them?" I asked. "Since David Chen called me yesterday morning." "You could have warned me." Callum turned to look at me directly for the first time in days. "Warned you about what? That your criminal boyfriend was under federal investigation, that your affair was about to destroy both our lives. You made these choices, Ysolde. I'm just trying to minimize the damage." I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen, and now our daughter gets to grow up knowing her mother was involved in a federal bribery scandal. The words cut deeper than any of Martinez's accusations. Lila doesn't have to know the details. She'll know. Kids at school will know. Their parents will know. This is a small town, and federal investigations make the news. He was right. By tomorrow, everyone would know that Ysolde Fenwick had been cheating on her husband with a criminal, using her connections to facilitate federal crimes. "What happens to us?" Callum stood up, straightening his tie with the same mechanical precision he'd shown throughout this nightmare. "There is no us anymore. My attorney is filing divorce papers tomorrow. You can stay in the house until the FBI investigation is complete, but after that, you'll need to find somewhere else to live." "What about Lila?" "What about her? You think I'm going to let our daughter live with someone who's testifying in a federal bribery trial? Someone who spent family money on hotel rooms with a criminal?" The finality in his voice was devastating. "Callum, please." "I have to pick up Lila from school. Try not to get arrested before I get back." He left me alone in our living room, surrounded by the remnants of our life together. In 6 hours, I'd be wearing a wire to record conversations with the man who'd destroyed my marriage. In 24 hours, divorce papers would be filed. And somewhere in the city, Mason Clark was probably planning what he'd say to convince me that everything would be fine, that he'd take care of me, that our relationship had been real. I almost wanted to believe him. Almost. The wire was smaller than I'd expected, a tiny transmitter taped between my shoulder blades, with a microphone no bigger than a shirt button clipped inside my blouse. Agent Martinez tested the equipment twice before I left the FBI field office, her voice crackling through their monitoring station. "Remember, we need him to admit he knew about the bribes and that he used you to facilitate meetings with city officials." The Meridian Grand looked different as I walked through the lobby at 7:55 p.m. The champagne fountain that had once seemed elegant now looked gaudy. The marble floors, that had clicked so seductively under my heels during those 3 nights with Mason, now echoed like a countdown to judgment. Mason was waiting at our usual table in the corner of the bar, looking as handsome and confident as ever. He stood when he saw me, kissing my cheek with the casual intimacy that had once made me feel special. Now it felt like a performance for an audience I couldn't see. "You look worried," he said, pulling out my chair. Don't be. Everything's under control. Under control? Mason, the FBI interviewed me today. They know about us, about the hotel rooms, about the meetings with city officials. He signaled the bartender for champagne, Dom Perignon, the same brand we'd shared in the penthouse suite. What did you tell them? The truth, that I introduced you to some people at business dinners, that we had an affair, that I didn't know you were under investigation. Mason's smile never wavered, but I caught something cold in his eyes. Good. That's exactly what you should have said. Good? Mason, they're talking about federal charges, bribery, conspiracy. They're fishing. They don't have real evidence, or they wouldn't need you to wear a wire. My blood froze. What? The wire. It's probably taped to your back, right? Small transmitter, button microphone. Mason's voice remained conversational, but his hand moved to cover mine on the table. To anyone watching, it would look like an intimate gesture. I've been through this before, sweetheart. Different city, different woman, same playbook. Different woman. The words confirmed everything David Chen and Agent Martinez had told me. I wasn't special. I was just the latest in a series of wives and girlfriends Mason had used for access and connections. You knew they were investigating you. I've known for months. Why do you think I moved so fast with the restaurant project? Why do you think I needed those introductions to city officials? Because you were paying them bribes. Mason laughed, a genuine sound that made my skin crawl. I was paying them consulting fees, very generous consulting fees for very expedited service. It's not illegal if it's structured properly. $47,000 in consulting fees. You've been talking to the FBI more than you admitted. His grip on my hand tightened slightly. What else did they tell you? I thought about Agent Martinez's instructions. Get him to admit he knew about the bribes. Get him to confirm he used you for access. Get him to reveal details about the payments. They said you used me, that sleeping with me was worth the investment because of my connections. Mason's expression didn't change. Did they play you the recording? What recording? The conversation with my business partner, where I said that. It was taken out of context, obviously. I was frustrated with the permitting delays, and I may have spoken crudely about our relationship. He was admitting it. The FBI was getting everything they needed. So you did use me? I used your connections, yes, but that doesn't mean I didn't care about you. Mason lifted our joined hands, kissing my knuckles. You're a beautiful, intelligent woman who deserves better than a boring hotel manager who doesn't appreciate you. Callum's divorcing me. Good. You'll be free to start over somewhere new. I have business interests in Miami, Las Vegas, Austin, cities where no one knows about this investigation. You want me to run away with you? I want you to be smart. The FBI is offering you immunity, right? In exchange for testimony against me. I nodded, wondering how he knew so much about federal investigation procedures. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to take the immunity deal. You're going to testify that I never told you about any payments to city officials. You're going to say you believed all our meetings were social, that I never asked you to facilitate anything improper. But that's not true. Truth is whatever you say under oath. And if you say the right things, if you protect me the way I've protected you, then after this blows over, we can be together properly. No more sneaking around, no more hotel rooms. Just us, starting fresh in a new city. The fantasy was tempting. Escape from the wreckage of my marriage, from the judgment of friends and family, from the consequences of my choices. Mason was offering me a way out, a chance to rewrite the story with myself as the victim instead of the perpetrator. What if they don't believe me? They'll believe you because you're a suburban housewife who got in over her head. You're not a criminal mastermind. You're just a woman who made some poor choices for love. For love. Even now, even after everything, Mason knew exactly what to say to make me want to believe him. The payments to city officials were consulting fees paid by my business partner without my knowledge. I'm as much a victim in this as you are. It was a lie, and we both knew it, But it was a seductive lie, one that would let me keep some shred of dignity while protecting the man I'd destroyed my marriage for. My phone buzzed. A text from Callum. Lila's asking when you're coming home. What should I tell her? Home. Where my daughter was waiting for a mother who'd betrayed everything their family stood for. Where my husband was preparing divorce papers and cooperating with federal agents to build a case against his own wife. I need to go, I said, starting to stand. Mason's grip on my hand tightened. Not yet. We need to finish this conversation. Finish what? Making sure you understand what happens if you don't protect me. His voice remained calm, but the threat was unmistakable. You introduced me to those city officials, Ysolde. You facilitated those meetings. You signed the room service receipts where the deals were negotiated. If I go down, you go down with me. The FBI offered me immunity, conditional immunity, based on your cooperation and testimony. But if your testimony implicates you in criminal activity, if you admit to knowingly facilitating bribery, that immunity disappears. He was right. I'd been so focused on the FBI's offer of protection that I hadn't considered how easily it could be revoked. You're threatening me. I'm protecting both of us. Stick to the story. You were an innocent woman who got caught up in something you didn't understand. I was a businessman who may have been overly generous with consulting fees, but never explicitly discussed bribes in your presence. Mason released my hand and stood up. Think about it tonight. Think about Lila growing up visiting her mother in federal prison. Think about Callum's testimony about your lies, your affairs, your spending. Think about how the story ends if you don't protect the man who actually cares about you. He kissed my forehead, a gesture that would look tender to anyone watching, but felt like a brand marking me as his property. I'll call you tomorrow before your next FBI interview. We'll go over the details then. Mason walked away, leaving me alone at the table with 2 glasses of champagne and the weight of impossible choices. Through the wire, I knew Agent Martinez and her team had heard everything. The threats, the lies, the admission that Mason had used me for access to city officials. But they'd also heard his strategy for destroying my immunity deal. I sat in the hotel bar for another 20 minutes, watching other couples share intimate dinners and champagne toasts, their lives untouched by federal investigations and criminal conspiracies. Then I drove home to face my husband and daughter, knowing that tomorrow I'd have to choose between protecting the man who destroyed my life and protecting what remained of my own future. The house was quiet when I got home. Lila was asleep, and Callum was in his study with the door closed. I could hear him on the phone, probably with his attorney or the FBI, planning the next phase of his methodical destruction of our marriage. I went upstairs and sat on our bed, the bed where Callum and I had made love, where we'd planned our future, where I'd lied about girls' nights while planning my next meeting with Mason. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. The wire worked perfectly. We'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. to discuss Mr. Clark's threats and your testimony options. Agent Martinez, tomorrow. I'd have to decide whether to honor the immunity deal that could save me from prison or protect the man who'd used me for access and was now threatening to destroy me if I didn't lie under oath. Either way, the woman I'd been, the wife, the mother, the respected event planner, was gone forever. All that remained was choosing which version of the truth would hurt the least. The FBI field office at 9 a.m. felt like a courtroom where I was both witness and defendant. Agent Martinez sat across from me with a transcript of last night's recording, every word of Mason's threats and admissions highlighted in yellow. "He's scared," she said, flipping through the pages. "The threats, the attempt to coach your testimony, that's the behavior of someone who knows he's caught. He said the immunity deal could be revoked if I admit to knowingly facilitating crimes. Mr. Clark is not a federal prosecutor. He doesn't determine the terms of your immunity." Martinez leaned forward. "But he's not entirely wrong. Your immunity is conditional on truthful testimony. If you lie under oath to protect him, the deal is void. Agent Bradley opened a laptop. We'd like to show you something. The screen displayed a bank account statement, Mason's business account, deposits and withdrawals over the past 6 months, including 5 payments of exactly $600 each. The dates match your cash advances, Martinez explained. Mr. Clark was reimbursing himself for the hotel expenses by taking money from accounts funded by the bribes he paid to city officials. You were literally paying for your own seduction with dirty money. The mathematical precision of Mason's manipulation was breathtaking. He'd used bribe money to seduce me, then convinced me to pay for our hotel rooms with my own family savings. There's more. Bradley clicked to another screen. Phone records show Mr. Clark called each of the city officials within 24 hours of your introductions. The calls were followed by cash deposits into offshore accounts controlled by those officials. We have him dead to rights on the bribery charges, Martinez continued. What we need from you is testimony about how he gained access to those officials, how he used your marriage to establish credibility, how he manipulated you into making those introductions. I thought about Mason's threat. If I go down, you go down with me. But looking at the evidence spread across the table, I realized he was already going down. The only question was whether I'd be standing beside him in the defendant's dock or testifying from the witness stand. What happens to me if I testify truthfully? You serve no prison time. You pay restitution for the hotel charges, about $4,000 total. You're barred from government contracting for 5 years, which affects your event planning business, but doesn't eliminate it entirely. And if I don't testify? You're charged as a co-conspirator. Federal bribery carries a maximum sentence of 10 years. Given your cooperation so far, you'd probably get 3 to 5 years, plus forfeiture of assets connected to the criminal enterprise. 3 to 5 years. Lila would be 12 or 13 when I got out of prison, if I got out. Old enough to understand exactly why her mother had been locked away. I'll testify. Martinez nodded. Good. We'll need you to go through every interaction with Mr. Clark, every introduction you made, every meeting you facilitated. The grand jury convenes next week. What about Mason? Does he know I'm testifying against him? Mr. Clark was arrested this morning at his apartment. He's being held without bail pending trial. Arrested. The man who'd promised to take care of everything, who'd threatened to destroy me if I didn't protect him, was now in federal custody facing decades in prison. Mrs. Fenwick, Martinez's voice softened slightly. I know this is difficult, but you're doing the right thing. Mr. Clark is a predator who's destroyed multiple families across multiple states. Your testimony will help ensure he can't hurt anyone else. Multiple families. I wasn't just another victim. I was part of a pattern that stretched back years and across state lines. I spent the next 4 hours going through every detail of my relationship with Mason, from that first night at the champagne fountain to last night's threats in the hotel bar. By the time I finished, the FBI had enough testimony to support federal charges that would put Mason away for the rest of his life. When I got home, Callum was waiting in the kitchen with a manila envelope. Divorce papers, he said, without preamble. I'm filing them this afternoon. I sat down across from him, feeling strangely calm. After months of lies and deception, the truth was almost a relief. What are you asking for? Full custody of Leela, the house, half of the retirement accounts, minus the money you spent on your affair. I'll agree to all of it. Callum looked surprised. Just like that? Just like that. You're a good father, and Lila needs stability. I can't provide that right now. What about visitation? Whatever you think is best for her. We sat in silence for a moment, surrounded by the remnants of our marriage. 9 years of shared dreams reduced to legal documents and asset division. For what it's worth, I said finally, I'm sorry. Not just about the affair, but about dragging you into the FBI investigation. About risking your career and reputation for something that meant nothing. It meant something to you, enough to risk everything we'd built together. I thought it did, but Mason was right about one thing. I was just another useful woman who got in over her head. Callum studied me with an expression I couldn't read. The FBI agent called this morning. She said your testimony will be crucial in convicting him. Are you proud of me for doing the right thing, or disappointed that it took federal charges to make me honest? I'm relieved that our daughter won't have to visit her mother in prison. It was a fair answer, probably the only answer he could give. Callum, when you were documenting everything, building the case against me, did you ever hope I'd come clean on my own, that I'd stop lying and try to save our marriage? He was quiet for a long time, every day, right up until the moment the FBI agents walked through our door. And now I hope you can rebuild your life into something Lila can be proud of. He stood up, gathering the divorce papers. I'm picking her up from school early today, taking her to my mother's house for the weekend. The news about Mason's arrest will probably break tomorrow, and I want her away from here when it does. Can I say goodbye? She's in her room packing. I found Lila sitting on her bed with her favorite stuffed animals, carefully arranging them in her overnight bag. She looked up when I came in, her dark eyes, so much like Callum's, serious and questioning. Are you and Daddy getting divorced? The directness of the question took my breath away. Yes, sweetheart, we are. Because of the man you were meeting at the hotel? She knew. Somehow, despite our attempts to shield her, she understood exactly what had torn our family apart. Because I made some very bad choices that hurt our family. Do you love him more than us? The question broke my heart. No, baby, I don't love him at all. I thought I did, but I was wrong about everything. Lila nodded solemnly. Daddy says you might have to go to court and tell people about the bad man. That's right. I have to tell the truth about what he did so he can't hurt other families. Will you go to jail? No, but Daddy and I won't be married anymore, and you'll live with him in this house. Can I still see you? Whenever Daddy says it's okay. And I'll always love you, no matter what happens. Lila hugged me then, a fierce, desperate embrace that felt like forgiveness and goodbye all at once. When Callum called her downstairs, she picked up her bag and walked to the door. Mommy, next time someone wants you to make bad choices, will you say no? Yes, baby, I promise. After they left, I sat alone in our house, Callum's house now, and thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. Successful event planner, devoted mother, faithful wife. That woman had thrown it all away for a few nights with a criminal who'd seen her as nothing more than a useful connection. My phone rang. Jennifer from the office. I heard about Mason's arrest on the news. Are you okay? I'm testifying against him. The FBI has recordings of him threatening me, evidence of him using me to access city officials. Jesus, Ysolde, I can't believe you got mixed up with someone like that. I can't believe it either. Jennifer, I need to ask you something. The business, can you buy out my share? I need to start over somewhere else after the trial. Where will you go? I don't know yet. Somewhere Lila can visit without being reminded of her mother's mistakes every day. We talked for another 20 minutes about business details and client transitions. Jennifer was professional, sympathetic, but I could hear the relief in her voice. My scandal had threatened our reputation, and my departure would allow the business to recover. After we hung up, I walked through the house one last time, the kitchen where Callum had confronted me with evidence of my lies, the living room where FBI agents had interviewed me, the bedroom where I'd planned my next meeting with Mason while my husband slept beside me. Tomorrow, Mason's arrest would be front-page news in the local paper. The details of his bribery scheme, his pattern of seducing connected women, his use of the Meridian Grand Penthouse for criminal meetings, all of it would be public record, and my name would be in every story as the local woman who'd facilitated his access to city officials. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Local restaurant investor arrested in federal bribery scheme. The article included Mason's photo, the same charming smile that had seduced me at the champagne fountain 6 months ago. Below his photo was a smaller image, the Meridian Grand Hotel, where our affair had played out under the surveillance cameras that captured every moment of my betrayal. The story was over. Mason was in federal custody, facing decades in prison. Callum was filing for divorce and full custody of our daughter. My business partnership was dissolving, and my reputation in the city was destroyed. But for the first time in months, I wasn't lying to anyone, including myself. I packed a suitcase with enough clothes for a week and drove to a small hotel across town, not the Meridian Grand, never again the Meridian Grand, to wait for the trial that would finally close this chapter of my life. In 6 months, I'd testify against the man who'd used me for access and threatened to destroy me when I became a liability. In a year, I'd be divorced and starting over in a new city where no one knew about federal investigations or adultery scandals. And someday, maybe Lila would understand that her mother had finally learned to choose truth over fantasy, consequences over comfort, reality over the seductive lies that had nearly destroyed everything that mattered.